Duckbill Rock Formation, Oregon. The Duckbill Rock Formation was a very popular tourist attraction in the Pacific Northwest. And why wouldn't it be? Seeing a sandstone pedestal shaped like a duck's bill? Yes, please. The iconic formation was so beloved that Oregon State Parks decided to erect barriers so that it would not be toppled accidentally. When officials found the rubble in August 2016, they reflected on its fragility, until a video surfaced with the truth. Was it age? Gravity? Nope, just a group of teenage quacks. Pun intended. The amazing feat of the wind transforming a lump of rock over thousands of years into the duckbill was destroyed in seconds by some teen vandals. Unfortunately, they were never caught. Still, they haven't exactly had great examples before them. In 2013, Glenn Taylor was leading a group of Boy Scouts through Goblin Valley when they came across the Goblins of Utah. These goblins occur when a harder rock sits atop a softer rock and protects the softer rock beneath it, and over millions of years, the soft rock elsewhere erodes, leaving a pinnacle. These can be found nowhere else in the world, and if it were up to Glenn and his buddies, they would not be found at all. Instead of admiring this phenomenon, Glenn saw it as a safety hazard. Or at least that's the excuse he made when questioned as to why he destroyed it. I'm not quite sure who the real MVP is in this story. Glenn, who with a few shoves destroyed one of nature's wonders, his son, who high-fived him when he did, or the cameraman, David Hall, who thought it was a good idea to film it all and upload the video. Taylor and Hall were later both charged with third-degree felonies, which included a year of probation and a fine to pay for warning signs telling future visitors to leave the rocks alone. Tree of Tinary. This was the only tree for 250 miles in Niger's Sahara Desert, the sole reminder of a greener Sahara, serving as a landmark for nomads for centuries. Bad news, nomads, it seems that you'll have to wander for maybe a century more, because the miracle of this tree surviving in that inhospitable environment would soon become a tragedy caused by a bottle, or several, of liquor. In 1973, an intoxicated Libyan driver plowed into the loneliest tree on earth, snapping its trunk. But officer, that tree came out of nowhere. Yeah, it literally did. Today, the remnants of the dead tree can be found in the Niger National Museum, and a metal sculpture erected in the place the tree once stood. Lithic cave paintings, Grotte de Lascaux. In 1940, Jacques Marçal and his three fellow French teenagers, while searching for their missing dog, stumbled across a cave with a gallery of over 600 paintings and 500 engravings on limestone, depicting animals, humans, hunting, and abstract signs. This art was considered to be the work of more than 1,000 generations. Unfortunately, the generation that followed the discovery would not be good for its survival. The unique character and physical realism made the site the pride and joy for Montignac, attracting a vast majority of visitors. These visitors carried heat, humidity, and other contaminants which altered the cave's climate. This and the unsuccessful attempts at air conditioning have led to growth of a pervasive fungus that threatened to cover the masterpieces. 23 years after its discovery, in 1963, it was closed. Still, to satisfy the public's desire to view it, Lascaux 2 was opened in 1983, which is an elaborate replica of key parts of the cave. Its purpose is to present an impression of the painting's scale and composition for the public without harming the original. Aral Sea. The Aral Sea, once the fourth largest lake in the world, has now become the world's most dramatic disappearing act. In the 1960s, the Soviet Union took on an irrigation project that diverted the rivers that once fed the Aral Sea. It has since been steadily shrinking. The series of images captured by the moderate resolution imaging spectrodiameter shows its dramatic reduction from 2000 to 2018. In 2000, the lake was already a fraction of its original size. Now you see it, now you don't. The drying up of the Aral Sea also devastated the fisheries and communities that depended on them. The remaining water grew increasingly salty and became polluted with fertilizer and pesticides. It has now become an eerie sight with degraded soil and a few strewn rusting ships. In 2005, Kazakhstan built a dam in a last-ditch effort to save the lake, but it would never become what it once was. Bangkok Lake, Cambodia. The Bangkok Lake was once a beautiful lake and lakeside area in the northern part of Phnom Penh. International visitors would frequent the scenic area and stay in guest houses, eat, drink, and watch the sunsets. Today, it's basically a puddle of its former self. In 2007, the Cambodian government granted development rights to Shukaku Inc., which by 2010 filled over 90% of the lake with sand to make way for buildings and various developments. That company is owned by the wife of a senator of the ruling party. The deal not only eliminated tourism in the area, but also had disastrous effects on the 4,000 plus families that depended on the lake for survival. Many either had to relocate, deal with frequent flooding, or receive some small amount of compensation. Fairy shrimp. Uluru, Australia. Humans seem to be talented at also destroying entire species. What is Uluru? Uluru is one of Australia's best known landmarks, a rock created over 600 million years ago and once sat at the bottom of a sea, but now stands 348 meters above ground. What is Uluru not? A loo. Let me explain. The Brachinella latsi was a rare fairy shrimp that was found only in the pools of the water on Uluru. They all disappeared in the 70s. In 2009, retired wildlife science professor Brian Timms did some research and came to the conclusion that human waste from tourists was the culprit. After visitors took to defecating on top of Uluru because there were no toilets available. Talk about being party poopers. What's worse is that the Uluru has great spiritual significance to Australia's indigenous Ngangu people. They ask that people do not climb Uluru at all. Their culture, however, prevents them from stopping visits as they believe that people should know right from wrong and have to take responsibility for their own actions. Clearly, not everyone thinks that way, or else visitors would at least walk with a plastic bag. Coltaya Glacier, Bolivia. This was once the world's highest ski resort, where you could ski above the clouds at 17,388 feet, or 5,300 meters, while admiring the beautiful views of Lake Titicaca. Due to the effects of climate changes, 80% of the glacier was lost in 20 years, and the rest vanished in 2009. Which was 6 years earlier than predicted. The ski area, which was a place where tourists visited all year round, is now a ghost town with an abandoned building. Not only was tourism affected, but so were the residents. Their local water supplies are also dependent on the surrounding glaciers. Maybe if humanity had gotten this good at making glaciers disappear back in 1912, the Titanic would have made Nazca Lines, Peru. The 2,000-year-old Nazca Lines, deemed one of the greatest enigmas of the archaeological world by UNESCO, is a series of images scratched into the surface of a coastal plain about 225 miles south of Lima. It's the world's best-known collection of geoglyphs. To fully appreciate its magnificence, it should be viewed from above. So clearly, a sight as spectacular as this must be mutilated by humans not once, but several times. And it has been. Partly because it's in close proximity to the Pan-American Highway that runs through the site, and one of the least responsible publicity stunts ever, enter Greenpeace. In 2014, the Peruvian government was angered by the activists when they conducted a publicity stunt during UN climate change talks being held in Lima. They laid a sign saying, "Time for change, the future is renewable, Greenpeace," next to the etching of a hummingbird. Their footprints and the sign, however, caused damage to the site. They aren't the only ones to damage it though. Drivers also caused damage when they cut through the plain. In February 2018, a truck driver intentionally drove his tractor-trailer off a roadway that runs through the historic site and damaged 3 geoglyphs. He was arrested and expected to be charged with an attack against cultural heritage. Del Paine National Park, Chile. The Torres del Paine National Park is the epitome of beautiful parks, with attractions such as granite rock formations, the Gray and Dixon glaciers, numerous waterfalls, and a variety of wildlife. But despite being a beautiful wonderland of ice and nature, this park gets destroyed by so many fires caused by humans it's almost a tradition. The first one was in February of 2005 and lasted for 10 days and destroyed 7% of the park. A tourist was using a gas stove in a grassland area where camping was prohibited. Then in February 2011, a tourist lit a bonfire in another unauthorized area. But thankfully, rain prevented this fire from causing extensive damages. But to make up for this, it seems another tourist caused a second fire in December of 2011 by burning some toilet paper. This forced the park's closure between 29 December 2011 and 4 January 2012. But that's not the last time. In 2015, 2 further tourists were banned from the park for 2 years when they were trying to start an illegal campfire. I think at this point a ban on all tourists might be warranted, or perhaps consider installing a fire suppression system for the entire park. But before I reveal number 1, here are some honorable mentions. Graffiti artist tags multiple national parks. Social media marketing is hard. You write a blog and post interesting pictures to get followers, yet to no avail. What's the next obvious step? Post nudes? Buy followers? No. Clearly, the next step is to go touring US national parks and leave giant murals of your face and social media accounts all over them. Or so Casey Knockett thought. The graffiti artist was banned from all national parks and other federally administered land, which is more than 20% of the US, and sentenced to 200 hours of community service for her artwork in at least 6 national parks. Next up, Dai Badendi, aka The Bather. In 2011, a giant floating styrofoam sculpture of a woman bathing was placed in the Alster Lake in Hamburg. Many tourists were in such awe of the 67-foot-long, 2-ton sculpture that they rented out paddle boats to get a closer look and kept bashing into it. This creation by German sculptor Oliver Voss was said to be an advertisement for the British beauty products company Soap and Glory to promote the art of bathing. This definitely got the attention it was looking for, as the sculpture had to be removed after 10 days. Maya Beach, Thailand. This picturesque bay, known for its clear waters, white sand, and lush, towering cliffs, served as the location for the 2000 movie The Beach, starring Leonardo DiCaprio, and has since seen a massive influx of tourism that has caused the deterioration of the bay's ecological system. The small beach started receiving up to 5,000 tourists and 200 boats a day. The pollution from the boats, litter, and other contaminants caused extensive damage to the coral around the Maya Bay. Despite the clear evidence of the damage being done, however, Thai officials were hesitant to shut it down since it generated a great amount of revenue. It was temporarily closed for 4 months from June 2018, but this was hardly enough time for the bay to recover from the increased activity. As such, in October, the Thailand's Department of National Parks, Wildlife and Plant Conservation announced that the closure would continue until the ecosystem returned to a normal state. Unfortunately, this might take many years, and so volunteers are working to try to rehabilitate the area.